Hey everyone, Justin here. Tuesday, January 26th. Tons and tons of new subscribers to the channel recently. So welcome, thank you. I hope you enjoy what you find here. So the way this works is every single Tuesday you get either like a training update, a casual chat about some questions, something like that. And then some Saturdays we do really deep dive, intense topics that are worth talking about. Today's video, I've got three things for you. Some Q&As. Answering a bunch of your questions a little bit deeper based off comments that I've gotten the last week or two that I wanted to touch base on a little bit. A quick chat about potential sponsorships and just my opinions on that. And then this week's TrainerRoad Group Workout of the Week. There are timestamps down below if you want to jump ahead, but I hope you stay in chat. So question number one from John. Do you have any bike fitting tips or positioning tips when you're in your aero bar? I noticed that your elbow pads are almost the same level as your saddle. Any thoughts? So you all don't get a lot of like side views from me. So the way my bike is set up, I actually have about an inch and a half or so of drop from my saddle to my aero bar. I made a video a while back basically giving tips for riding an aero. So if you've never seen that, I actually think that that's one of my favorite videos that I've made. The biggest thing that I would say if you're able to get to a professional fitter, of course, that is what you should do. So really clear, you should go to a professional fitter. If you don't have access to a professional fitter, or you can't afford one, they're booked up, they're closed right now, whatever. The first thing you should do before making any changes to your bike is measure everything. So if you make a change, you can always undo it. That's the biggest thing. And then the next tip that I would give is always one thing at a time. And then some general rules of thumb for me. I always sort of like to work from my feet up throughout my body, if you will. So I'm not a professional fitter, so let's get that out of the way. But this is just when I've made changes in the past, that's how I've done it. So I start with my cleat positioning. Once my cleat positioning is right, then I move up to my saddle position, both height and fore and aft, and then that affects then my arms, and then so everything sort of like works up, right? That's the logic behind it for me. But as always, the gold standard is going to be go to a professional fitter. Life in Retrospect says, do I wear cycling clothes underneath the wetsuit? So it depends. Non-Ironman races, you're not allowed to change clothes. You're allowed to change, but you're not allowed to get fully nude. So the gold standard here is a tri-suit, right? If you're just doing like your very first sprint or your Olympic, a cheap tri-suit is a good investment. If you don't want to spend the money though, what do you do? What I have seen people do in the past, and you're going to want to test this in your training, but for men, wearing a Speedo, and then for women, swim bottoms and then a sports bra, you can wear that under your wetsuit. And then when you come out of the swim, take your wetsuit off, and then you can put like bike shorts on or bibs over your bottoms and then a jersey if you want. That's a pretty good option. Of course, you'll want to test that you're comfortable riding like in swim bottoms underneath your bike shorts because technically you're not really supposed to wear anything under your bike clothes. But if it's just a sprint, you could probably get away with that. There's always a way to do it without spending money. And if that's what you want to do, that would work. Justin, what do you think about buying a used rig and updating it? For instance, I have my 98 Specialized LA Pro. I thought about putting some aero bars on it. It blows me away how relevant that rig still is. And you can get it for under $400, maybe a rear disc cover. Yeah, I think it's a great way to do it. The interesting thing is, if you're comparing like vintage bikes to current bikes, position is still king, right? So position, both in terms of like counteracting aero drag and position in terms of still being able to put out power, that is far and away the biggest thing that's slowing you down, as well as good rubber. So if you can put, like GP 5000s, like if you can put 25s on those tires, which you might be able to, you're gonna get the vast majority of it, right? There's a phrase in weightlifting, which is don't major in the minors, which is to say like don't spend all of your time focusing on these really little things when you're not hitting the big things. And the big things are getting into an aerodynamic body position. If the bike supports that, based off of like its geometry and the components that you've got to allow you to get into that aero position for speed, the round tubes of that bike are not slower than the round tubes of a current bike, right? So if you can make that happen, I think it's a great way of doing it. Rear disc covers. For everyone out there, if you've not looked at a rear disc cover, you seriously should. I feel like they're a little bit like the pocket protectors of triathlon. Like Disc covers are not as cool as Zip 858s, but disc covers are just these plastic circles that clip onto your rear wheel and essentially make your existing wheel a disc wheel. And, you know, like I said, they're not as cool as $3,000 Zips or Envies, but they effectively work just about the same as a disc wheel in the back. So it's a huge gain for super, super cheap. So there's a lot you can do with an old bike, especially if your point is just to have aero gains. You can do a lot for really cheap. Bennett asks, how does one find an independent bike fitter? I assume you don't mean get fitted by the same shop where you buy the bike. My go-to resource is the Slow Twitch Fitter Directory, which is linked in the description below. This is, for those of you who are not aware, the value of an independent bike fitter is, you know, not all shops sell all brands, of course, and it's very possible that the ideal bike for you isn't sold by the bike shop that you're at. So an independent bike fitter can say, hey, based off your fit needs, we think you should actually be on this bike over here. You should go check out that one. It's also worth noting that between different brands, you know, brand A might have an endurance frame and a race frame, and brand B has an endurance frame and a race frame. But sometimes this brand's endurance frame can actually be more aggressive than like this brand's race frame. Like it can be sort of like one of these situations. So that's the real value of an independent bike fitter. They're not everywhere though, you know, regardless of where you're at, especially if you're in a less populated area, it can be really hard to find an independent bike fitter if cycling's not super popular in an area, you know, it doesn't support that. So if you're in a situation where you have to go to a bike shop, it's still 100% worth it. Like even if you're only choosing between the brands that are being sold to you right there, I still think that's worth it compared to just going in blind. But if possible, I would recommend working with an independent one. Mr. Pepperoni asks, what's the point in using TrainerRoad and Zwift at the same time? So I don't find Zwift fun. Like, sorry, I just don't. Zwift races are okay, and I've live streamed a few of them here, and I don't hate them, but I find them mostly just like a threshold test, and it's not like road racing. So Zwift racing is okay to me, but just aimlessly Zwifting around Watopia just doesn't do it for me. I can do TrainerRoad without anything else, and I have done TrainerRoad without anything else, but I do like having the visual of the workout that I'm doing in TrainerRoad connected to seeing how hard I'm biking in Zwift. And I gotta be honest, it's barely worth it to me, and I've almost pulled the plug on Zwift a lot of times. And there will come a day where you're not going to see me on Zwift. Whereas I like TrainerRoad quite a lot. So if I had to pick TrainerRoad or Zwift, TrainerRoad all day, every day. But for me, Zwift provides me just a little additional entertainment, which it's worth it right now. What kind of music do I listen to while working out? I actually have a playlist built out, and it's in the description below. And the interesting thing is I've actually slid this playlist into the description for a lot of videos recently, but I just never told anyone about it. So if you want to listen to exactly what I listen to, there's a Spotify link. If you don't have Spotify, you should still be able to view the playlist. You just can't listen to the music. It's a lot of alt rock, a little bit of rap, a little bit of, there's less like bubblegum pop than there used to be, but I will freely admit when it comes to working out, bubblegum pop can get me through a lot of intervals that nothing else can, so I have no shame. That's it for Q&A this week. If you ever have a question, you can drop it in the comments. I try to reply to as many comments as I can, but I thought it was fun to do a little bit deeper of a dive on some of these questions that I thought some more people would benefit from. Quick chat about sponsorships. Someone made a comment on my bike rant video, bye bike brand scholarships, and yeah, that's probably true. And the funny thing is, I'm not fundamentally opposed to ever working with a brand. What I actually said in that video was not that bike brands are terrible. What I said was that bikes are better now than they've ever been. But what I also said was that I don't subscribe to the idea that we need to, pretend that this half-ounce gain is world-changing, or this like 1.5% additional stiffness is world-changing. And I stand by that. I don't think it is. There are brands out there that give back to the sport and are honest in their marketing, and hey, there's nothing wrong with wanting to make money. If you can do that in a way that I think is honest, hey, maybe we can talk about it. But the big thing for me is YouTube is just a fun way to talk about triathlon and hopefully maybe encourage people to get into the sport. If you look back at my really old videos from 3 or 4 years ago, the one thing that I really said then that has never changed is I want to see more people get into the sport. And that's my driving motivation behind making YouTube videos. YouTube is not going to be my full-time job, and I'm not angling for YouTube to become my full-time job, which means that I can say things without fear or concern for making brands happy. And that's super valuable to me. Like, I don't ever want to be held accountable to say something that I don't feel to tell people because it pays the paycheck or I worry about losing a relationship. So honesty and integrity are always going to be my number one driving factors. And then if there's a brand that's like, hey, we love what you're doing, we think we align on our values, and here's what we're about, maybe we can chat. But it's always going to be because I am interested in what they do first, before anything else. And then lastly, the TrainerRoad Group Workout of the Week. This last Sunday's was a ton of fun. It was sort of like the YouTuber crew. We had Matt Legrand and Jase Likes Bikes. So there's links to both their channels in the description below. But it was a ton of fun. We just did a bunch of threshold work. Good news, bad news for me personally, I think my FTP is definitely due to go up because a lot of these workouts are feeling undeservedly easy, which is a great problem to have. But it also means that TrainerRoad workouts are about to get hard again. And I do have a ramp test next Tuesday. I think I might make it next Monday just so I can bring it to you in next week's video. So I'm looking forward to that. Next, I have a bunch of free TrainerRoad codes. So speaking back to sponsorships, I'm definitely not sponsored by TrainerRoad. Every single TrainerRoad user gets access to a few free months, and these are the ones I've got. So they're linked in the description below. If you want to use them, they're there until they're gone. I hope it helps you out. If you want to join me for this week's TrainerRoad Group Workout of the Week, it's Sunday at 11 a.m. Pacific, just like always, and the workout is right there. It should be fun. If you have any questions or anything like that, feel free to leave a comment. You know I try to reply to as many as I can. I hope your training is going well. I hope racing happens. That's where we're at. All right, I'll see you on the next week. Thanks for hanging out. Bye.